We need to have a conversation about a very dangerous idea that's spreading rapidly. The notion that rising global anti Semitism is somehow because of Israel, because of what Israel does or what Netanyahu says. That framing establishes a false causal relationship. Israel's actions lead to global anti Semitism. In other words, the claim is that whatever Israel does causes violence, hatred, and bigotry against Jews worldwide. And that gives people permission to act on their hatred while blaming it on Israel rather than on their own ugly hearts. Let's be clear. Hatred of entire people based on identity is never caused by politics. It comes from bigotry itself. By tying anti-Semitism to Israel, you absolve the haters of accountability and hand them a ready-made excuse. And I promise you, these people who harbor this kind of hatred don't need another excuse. Now, maybe you think it makes sense. Maybe you think it makes sense. If Israel does certain things, of course, there's a reaction worldwide. But that logic falls apart the moment you apply it to other communities. Just imagine attacking Muslims around the world because of what Hamas is doing. Imagine someone walking into a restaurant, seeing Muslims and shouting, "What you're doing to the hostages is disgusting." We would all immediately recognize that's absurd. That's absurd. Muslims everywhere obviously aren't collectively responsible for Hamas, the Taliban, or ISIS. But when people reinforce this supposed casual link between Israel and the global Jewish population, what they're really legitimizing is collective punishment. And it only happens towards the Jews. And collective punishment isn't just racism or xenophobia, it's the very foundation of Nazi ideology. Nazis blamed Jews simultaneously for socialism in Germany and capitalism in Soviet Russia. The logic didn't matter, the scapegoat did. And from what that mindset came the belief that all Jews must pay for what some Jews were accused of doing. That's what makes this so dangerous. The idea that Jews are uniquely treated as collective, where one is responsible for all and all are responsible for one. No other community in the world is treated this way. This is how mass brainwashing works. In Nazi Germany, ordinary Germans weren't just passive, they were indoctrinated to believe their hatred was legitimate and very justified. They thought it was moral to act on it. And that's precisely the same ideological pattern we are seeing today, right now, in front of our eyes. When people say, "What would you be doing during the Holocaust is what you'd be doing now," they are right. They are right. So what would you be doing during the Holocaust is what you're doing right now, because the same mechanisms of collective blame and justification are in play and in action. Now let's zoom out maybe a little bit. Supremacy looks different depending on the region. In the West, the historic dominant system was, Christian nationalism. In the Middle East, it was Islamic supremacy, but it was clearly embodied in the caliphate. And so for 1400 years, the caliphate enforced a system where non-Muslims lived under legal and social discrimination, what many today would call apartheid. Many indigenous communities converted simply to avoid, serious persecution. And so this is why it's so baffling to see so-called anti-supremacy activists who defend indigenous and minority groups in the West suddenly stand against indigenous and minority groups in the Middle East, siding instead with the Islamist supremacists seeking to reestablish the caliphate. That supremacist ideology is precisely why jihadist groups target and kill Jews and Christians, Kurds, and any other minority groups. And no, Hamas are not like the Black Panthers. They are not a liberation movement. Hamas is far closer to the KKK, a terrorist organization committed to killing non-believers and enforcing religious and ideological supremacy. So the real point is, the fact of the matter is, if you support jihadists today, you would have supported the KKK in America less than 200 years ago, another group that called itself defensive while terrorizing minorities. So thank you for your time and attention.